Hi, brothers and sisters. Hopefully my volume is okay. We can be heard. I thought we'd do this little video, and it is going to be a little video. I don't think it's going to be that long, although I can be long-winded. But I thought it was important that we understood this before we moved into the final video that I've been promising. And yes, I've been thinking a lot on it, and I've been taking my notes, because as you read passages, you do have to contemplate and think on things, and allow the Spirit to lead your mind in a direction that you yourself wouldn't normally go with it. Based on all the information that you've been that I've managed to compile, which isn't extensive, really. But there's so much thinking that goes into that by way of the Spirit leading you in pathways that you would not take. And when you do that, you end up with a lot of questions really coming back in your spirit and going, well, all right, well, if it's that way, then this question comes up. And so I've been taking some of those notes down, and it really is amazing when you get this deep into the study how you really do realize that we have truly departed from the pathway that the Lord intended us to be, and how we really have become so saturated in sin in the way that we think that we couldn't possibly relate to God's way. God says, my ways are not your ways. And when you begin to understand what God's ways look like with the covenant established, it does not look a thing like the one that we currently have. And when you tell that to people who haven't gone on in the pathways that we've been moving through, this pathway that we've been on and climbing, it's very difficult to present it to them without it going right over their head. And that's why God says, my ways aren't your ways. You couldn't possibly understand my ways, because you are so deep-rooted in sin, and you have been so brainwashed with a covenant that is not mine, that it is extremely difficult, unless you've been in it for years, trying to truly understand the truth that God would have you to understand, that it ain't gonna just people's just gonna reject it. That's my understanding. The few that I've told to that are close to me, and I said, this is what God's covenant truly is in the land and what it looks like, and when you really take a look at it, you see all the fallout that come as a result of not putting God's covenant in play. But that aside, I thought this was important, that we really understand that the sevenfold Spirit, or the seven mighty archangels, are not male. They are not even half and half. They are identified as female. And I wish I took the time, but I didn't, sorry. There is a word in the New Testament Greek, and it does so have the idea that they rejected the hierarchy of God, and that is feminine. The hierarchy, when you go in and you study principles, and those are females, and they rejected that hierarchy as female. They did not want female as their hierarchy. When it comes to this order of archangels or angelical beings. Now that's to be understood in a series of words in the New Testament. Once again, if you're in and through a lot of revelation, actually a lot to do with thrones and powers and dominions and principles, you'll hit on these words. And the glory, I'm trying to think of the exact word, I think it's 1411 in Greek. Let me just see if I can find it before we move through this, to identify that the sevenfold Spirit, the Camp of Mahanaim, the presence of God, these so-called seven archangels, were definitely identified as female. Okay, so it's 1411 I'm looking for. So let's see if we can find it. I believe it's 1411. I'm just trying to... I can't think of the exact word. I'll find it. I do know my numbers. I can count to 10. Okay, 1411. Now I'm half blind without my... There it is. 14:11 is force, power, ability, abundance. That may not be the word I'm looking for. Okay, sorry to take this much time. Deeds, works, miracles, power, authority, might. And it has the idea of an archangel or angelical host. 14:12. That must be the word. Strength. To make strong, to have strength. No, see, it's a very different word. Anyway, if you look it up, it is female, and it does have the idea of power and might, and it'll lead you to the idea of a stacking order, archangel, a hierarchy. So anyway, we're going to begin in this, and we're going to read these pretty quick, so although I babbled here for 6 minutes, I'm sorry. We'll try to get through this information pretty fast. So we'll start with 1 Samuel 2, verse 5. They that were full have hired out themselves for bread, and they that were hungry ceased, so that the barren hath borne 7 daughters, and she that hath many sons hath waxed feeble. So she that had many sons, it means her hope and her expectation is gone. That's right. So, you know, I put daughters here because it doesn't make sense not to say it. Watch what it says if you read it that way. It says, so that the barren had borne 7, we'll say sons, and she that has many sons hath waxed feeble. Does that make sense to say 7, 7? 7 and then many. One sons and the other is also sons. It doesn't make sense. They just don't want to say 7 daughters. They'll say 7 children, but they will not put daughters in there. You want to know why? Because they rejected the hierarchy of heaven. That's why, plain and simple. Jeremiah 15:9. The mother of 7, again it says, won't say daughters, it's daughters, will grow faint. She will breathe her last breath. And actually, I speculated here, the mother of 7. I think it should say the mother who will eventually have 7 daughters. Will grow faint. She will breathe her last breath. Her sun, S-U-N, will set while it is still day. She will be disgraced and humiliated. So who are we talking about? Well, we're talking about the personification of Israel as a woman. And it was a woman because she's identified as a woman's seed. And she's also identified as a red heifer. We're dealing with the female aspect of the Godhead, who was rejected as the hierarchy and the glory that would rule the kingdom. And but they love to just, they don't want you to know your identity. The mother of 7 daughters is what it clearly should say. Has grown faint, she will breathe her last breath. Her sun will set while it is still day. A day of darkness is what we're in. Oh yeah, we get daylight, but we're still in darkness because we haven't got the truth established in the land. She will be disgraced and humiliated. That's the daughters of Israel. And the rest I will put to the sword in the presence of their enemies, declares the Lord. So, the humiliation and the disgrace of these daughters leads you to, I believe it's Isaiah 63, where it says, I will cause you to drink the wine of astonishment. And you will stagger when you realize what he will do to the law system, which he will yoke you with when he gets a hold of it in his possession. And so she says to them in so many words, I'm not ruling through a harlot that'll bow to a man as if he's Lord and God, because he's not Lord and God. The glory was always intended to. And these 7 daughters, which identifies the Spirit of God in the earth. So we'll go to Isaiah 51:18. It says, there is none to guide her among all the sons whom she has brought forth. Neither is there any son that taketh her by the hand. There is none that taketh her hand of all the sons that she has brought up. Who's that? Israel. What does it mean? They're none leading her. Oh, they're telling her they're leading her, but they're not really leading her. They're bringing us into, into a corrupt system of sin. They're not leading her. It says, the prophets have not discovered what the sin of the daughters of Israel was. That's in Lamentations chapter 2, verse 18, I think. It says they are false prophets. They prophesy through Baal. They prophesy through man. They prophesy through themselves. They prophesy through husband. They prophesy through bridegroom. They prophesy through father. They began to use the he pronoun. And that brought her into the bondage of a man-made law. That's what we're told. And when the kings rejected this hierarchy, as it's called in the New Testament, this is the kings took counsel. And they said, let us cut her bands asunder. Well, the bands there is a reference to her very light law system of 10 commandments, which you find in Deuteronomy 4. She says, you saw no image, make no image. And you ended up with a triple male image. And the daughters of the land began to bow to Baal as if he was Lord and God, bridegroom. That's another name of an idolatrous idol, your husband as Lord and God, that you bow down to. And she says, that's not the scepter I rule through. Jeremiah 10, verse 20. My tent is destroyed. Whose tent? Israel. The daughter of Israel's tent was destroyed. And all its ropes are snapped. My sons have departed from me and are no more. I have no one left to pitch my tents or set up my curtains. Well, the daughters are the ones that are going to do it. Amos 5:2. Fallen is virgin Israel, virgin daughter Israel, she who sits between the cherubim. And she's identified in 1 Kings chapter 19. She's identified in Isaiah 37. She's the one that sits between the cherubim. Never to rise again. She lies abandoned on her land with no one to raise her up. No, but she's going to bear what? 7 daughters is what she's going to bear. It doesn't make sense to say 7 sons and then to say all the sons, there is none to guide her, and then say, oh, she's going to bear 7 sons. No, she ain't. She's going to bear 7 daughters. That's the hierarchy that was rejected. Isaiah 4:1. In that day, 7 women or daughters will take hold of not one man. No, our head isn't male. This is what we miss in the context. What does it say in Isaiah 47? I'll go there. Isaiah 47. Who's in view? Well, in simplistic terms, it's the Queen Babylon, who is the spirit actually ruling this kingdom. And that's in Isaiah 47. It's the harlot spirit ruling in the earth. And what does she say? She says, I will never be widowless. I will never be childless. Where's my... What did I do with it? Did I drop it? Sorry, folks. There it is. She says, therefore hear now this. This is verse 8. Thou that art given to pleasure, that dwellest carelessly, that sayest in thine heart, I am and none else besides me. I will not sit as a widow, neither shall I know the loss of children. That's a harlot spirit in the land. And what does she say? Let me see if I can find it here right quick. Okay, so she must have said this before. She says, I'm hid in his heart. Right there, verse 7. So it was the preceding verse. I do this all the time. And thou saidst, I shall be a lady forever. She's saying a queen. Lady means queen. I shall be a queen forever, so that thou didst not lay these things to thine heart. Neither didst thou remember thy latter end. No, where is it? I thought it was there. because she brags. Right there. In verse 10, this is what she says. So, yeah. For thou hast trusted in your wickedness, in playing man's harlot, in bowing to an idol. You've trusted in this wickedness, your own wickedness. Thou hast said, none seeth me. That's the harlot spirit exalted in man's heart. Thy wisdom and thy knowledge it has perverted thee, because you are not listening to your mother wisdom. And thou hast said in thine heart, I am, and none else beside me. So here we're looking at the harlot spirit in man's heart that's exalted. If he has the harlot spirit exalted in his heart, what's ruling his head? The harlot spirit's ruling his head. All right, here's the twist. If he's supposed to be your head, what are you? What do you think you're going to become? If the harlot spirit's ruling in his heart, and we know the heart rules the head, or the head rules the heart, as they said, but in this case we're looking at the heart ruling the head. He's got the harlot spirit exalted in there. She says, I will never be widowless, I will never be childless, no one sees me. And then they tell us women that he's our head, and he's got the harlot spirit exalted in his heart where no one sees her, and she's ruling his head. What are you? What are you? You are playing his harlot. He is not your head. He never was your head. Mother Israel, also another name, Mother Wisdom, is who was to be our head. See, I walk around with a female head, with a female brain. That's right. And it says the spirit is to rule all things. Well, guess what? He told me that I had to listen to his head, and by extension, the spirit that's ruling his heart. Yeah, that's how it all works. Hubby is not Lord and God in the land, the bridegroom. That's the idol of Baal that they began to build up for you women to bow down to. Okay, so on we go. So in that day, 7 women will take hold of their head, finally, Israel, Mother Israel. And they're going to say, we will eat our own food and we will provide our own clothes. No man's feeding you. No man's clothing you. This is leading us to the identification of what our true covenant in the land ought to be looking like. That'll be in the next video. Because he ain't clothing her. He ain't feeding her. They say, we will do that ourselves, only let us be called by thy name. Our mother, Israel, who is our head from above. Only let us be called by thy name, which is Israel, to take away our disgrace. Now what? They didn't have a name. They need a name to take away their disgrace. They're not recognized as a separate entity in the land, which they need to establish themselves as a separate entity, a separate body, a separate house. Again, hint, hint, on the identification of our true covenant in the land. So we have not even a name. Earth you saw is Babylon right now. And that's not recognized in the heavens. That harlot spirit is not recognized. It is only when we, as 7 daughters, possibly the daughters that come off the 7 continents, call out to our mother and say, let us be called by thy name to take away our shame. So what does it say in Zephaniah 3? What does it say? No, I didn't find the verse, but Zephaniah 3. So she says, the Spirit of the true Lord, God, I will get you fame and glory in every land where you were put to shame, where you were humiliated. So what is Zion called? Well, Zion's name, or is just another name for a branch, the new branch out of the roots of her mother Israel. That's right. But what does Zion lead us back to? It leads us back to the idea of a dried land. Her waters, her words, her law, her 10 commandments is her law system. was dried up, and she became the outcast that no man sought a covenant with. They rejected the hierarchy of heaven. And it's all there, if you want to go in and study it. Isaiah 49:21. Then you will say in your heart, who has begotten these for me? Begotten, a man can't birth. It's not a man that's begotten her children for it. It is her mother Israel, from above. Or, because it's so difficult with the language that they've given. At times it almost sounds like Israel herself saying, who's begotten me, my children back? Mother Israel from above. But yet we know, that the spirit in the earth is reborn. And those are questions that she's going to say, who has begotten me, my children? And she will say in her heart, who has begotten these for me? I was bereaved and I was barren. I was exiled and I was rejected. That's Zion became the outcast. So who has reared them for me? Who has raised them? So we're getting almost the context of both in view here. So if it's the daughters rising up in the earth to be called by Israel's name, then they're also going to be rearing up children in the name of their mother Israel. So we see that in this whole passage. And yet in other passages it seems like it totally flips around. Now Isaiah 49, it does describe the servant Israel, and it is female. They'll say, this is the firstborn of her womb. It says his womb. You are the firstborn, Ephraim. No, that's the daughter. Israel is the firstborn of the mother's womb. She is. And we've studied that, and she's also identified as the true light of the world, not the false light shining upon her. Right? So Genesis 21:29. Abimelech asked Abraham, what is the meaning of these 7 female lambs, or she-goats, that you have set apart by themselves? So we're seeing the sevenfold spirit there in the earth, identified as female. Now, we know that the camp of Mahanaim, it was in Genesis, I believe, 32, where we find Jacob wrestling with her. And what we discovered is that he was actually attempting to take her birthright from her, and he did. She hands it over, and she says, fine. But she hamstrings him. And now there's a deep understanding on why she hamstrung him. And we discussed that in one of the videos. So I'm not going to do it here. But that same presence of God, known as the camp of God, known as the presence of God, is also identified as being with the Shulamite. And it's a double camp. So we know that adds up to 144,000 first fruits. And they are the ones to be called the new Israel, the branch in the earth. And we appear to have 7 daughters out of that, known as the sevenfold spirit. Now those 7 lamps, known as the 7 spirits of God, are around the throne. And its daughter, Israel, who is the Lord, and it is her covenant that we were to hearken to, and we did not. So we see the Shulamite with us. So what are the sevenfold spirit in the land? What were they? Well, the Spirit of the Lord, that's daughter Israel. Her number is 136. The head that this camp, this congregation that met in the north, identified in Isaiah 14, but they're identified as a congregation of women in Psalm 68, is surrounding their own head, who has laid amongst the ash heap. It says right there. And then she says, though you have laid amongst the ash heaps, your wings are like the wings of a dove, female, that'll be covered with silver and gold. And this is their head that was burned to ashes as the heifer. That's right. And is also found in the Genesis 15:9 covenant. And so the sevenfold spirit, the Spirit of the Lord. That's the presence of God here on earth. And that is 7 daughters reborn out of the dust of the earth. Number 2, spirit of wisdom. Number 3, understanding, spirit of understanding. Number 4, spirit of counsel. Number 5, spirit of might. Number 5, spirit of knowledge. And number 7, the spirit of the fear of the Lord. To truly fear. It says, they mumble, they will groan, but they will learn the truth. And she says, your worship of me has come down to nothing more than the vain traditions of men. What men taught you to bow down to, which was male, male, male. So, they've been identified as female. The presence of God is female. The camp of Mahanaim is female. The 7 daughters that are born by she who has borne many, many, many sons, who will never lead you into anything but a pathway of lies. And those kings in Psalm 2 took counsel together to cut away her law system. They did not want her to cut away the hierarchy of heaven. And she pulls her power off and she says, I ain't ruling through a harlot spirit. But the one who has borne many sons, she's going to bear 7 daughters in the land. She is. And they're going to ask to be called by her name once again when they wake up. And it says, the Lord will awaken as a warrior that's been drunk on wine, on a doctrine of lies. You got to part the Red Sea into the true covenant of God and what it looks like in the land when it's truly established. And it is not the one that we see in full display globally. And we'll discuss that on the next video whenever I think I'm done thinking about things and I'm thinking I've got the passages together that are the most important. Of course, I can't hit at every topic, though I'd like to. I just think it's important that we identify that the presence of God in the land is not male. The one that sits on the high throne or the high almighty God is not male. They want to make everything male, male, male. She says, you rejected me from the beginning. You rejected the cornerstone. You did not want my daughters in covenant. And you put in play a harlot spirit so you could play God. So you could rule her and make her your harlot is what you did. And you told a whole bunch of lies. And you perjured yourself in the courts of heaven is what you did. That's to fallen Adam. And it says she went silent. She says, long time have I held my peace. Now will I go forth as a travailing woman, and I will destroy and I will devour at once, and I will lead you in pathways that you have not known. And then in Psalm 50, she says, you thought I was a man just like you. I'm not a man. I'm a woman. I tabernacle in a very different body. I do not tabernacle in the body of a man, but he wanted me under him, you see. And again, we're going to see and look at that covenant. And like I said, most people that I've kind of tossed out some of that information to just has a hard time wrapping their brain around it. That the covenant that is so in the land everywhere is not the covenant of God. It is not. And so we'll take a look at that at some point in the near future, hopefully. I don't know when. Again, it may be a month or 2 down the road. I'm still compiling information, still trying to think about things in a manner that God would have me think about them, and just trying, as it says in, I forget which passage, Psalm 50 or Psalm 55, where she says, I'm going to set the case in order, and I'm going to rebuke you, Adam, and I'm going to prove to you my case and what the real truth is. And God says, who can do that? From generation to generation, what took place? Well, we see the rejection of the true covenant of the daughter of Israel in the land is what we see today. And there are no sons to take her by the hand to lead her. It's going to have to be the daughters that do that. That is the reborn spirit of Israel in the land, which is promised full restoration back to her rightful place. And God says in Psalm 2, that's our mother who's saying it to her. She says, this day have I begotten thee, this day have I birthed you with my spirit in your inner parts, to rule your mind, not what's in his heart and then in his brain, saying that he's your ruler in your head, because he's not. You got to pull out of those lies. And you got to study to show yourself approved. And once the Spirit sees that and sees that you're willing to follow in places that most people won't even attempt to go, because, they've been taught, it's brainwashing. It's a form of brainwashing when you've been taught these lies. From time we were babies. It says they go astray from the minute they are born from the womb, and we do. It doesn't matter if you're raised in what they call a Christian upbringing. You go astray from day one because they've taught you nothing but a religious lie, his religious lies, instead of the truth from God and what that covenant really looks like in the land. And unless you've been on that path for quite a few years, it's going to be extremely difficult to wrap your brain around it, because God says, my ways are not your ways. You took everything and you turned it upside down. You twisted it real good into a nice big old lie that suited you. So anyway, there's the videos. I didn't actually expect it to be this long. Sorry I babbled so long. Don't know when the last video will be up, but I did think it was important that we identify the presence as female. The 7 archangels are not male. I'm so sick of male, 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 everything male, male. They're female. And this world denied the hierarchy of heaven, which was found in the presence of God, the camp of Mahanaim, and that was female, not male. So anyway, thanks for watching. I pray the Lord blesses you with an abundance of truth, and I hope you all have a really nice day. And thanks again.